Hey guys, I'm Aaron from PhoneDog.com, and move over BlackBerry. There's a new competitor in your field that wants a slice of your pie. The Motorola Droid Pro is available now from Verizon Wireless for $199.99 after a $100 mail-in rebate. You know, and it looks and feels and even acts like a BlackBerry, and there's a reason behind that. Motorola wants it to. They said at the CTI event in San Francisco a couple of weeks ago they wanted to appeal to BlackBerry users that are a little bit tired of the platform, kind of sick of the way the phones look, sick of BlackBerry 6. They want an Android experience, but they still need that physical QWERTY keyboard. I know if you've looked at an Android 2.2 enabled device, the Gmail app's pretty similar, but there still are some changes for people that are migrating from Android 2.1 or something beyond that. You notice the changes immediately. The addition to add multiple Gmail accounts, which was enabled in 2.1, but it's nice to be able to do it from the main screen here instead of going down into settings. Just click on the email address and you can add an additional Gmail account there, which is pretty cool. Now, other features include, let's take a look here. Let me see if I can find a longer email where I can show you. That one's a little bit longer. You notice that the header is a little bit different in terms of the way the writing looks, but also this little area here with the ability to star the email to respond, and then to click the more button and get reply all and forward. Now, if you're like me, I read an email, I get a bunch of emails every day, so I'll read an email and I'm halfway through and thinking, who did I get this from again? Don't have to worry about that with the Gmail app because it holds it up at the top while you scroll down through it. So if you're halfway through and you think, who did I? You can go back up and say, oh, Google Voice sent me an email. How nice of them. So you can see that there, and of course, now that it's unlocked out of portrait only mode, you can use it in landscape as well. Out of the box, the Droid Pro, while I'm thinking about it, the Droid Pro comes in portrait only mode, but you can unlock that by going into settings if you want to use it in landscape mode. But very cool improvements to Gmail. Otherwise, settings are very similar, and then of course you can add your account from the settings if you just don't want to. Click up there. Let's have a look at the Android market, and you can see, again, if you're coming from an older Android device, the market's changed a little bit, not too much, unless you're coming from way back, like Android 1.5 or 1.6. You see the Verizon tab up here, which will give you some recommended apps from Verizon. We'll scroll down through those. Mostly VCast stuff. A couple of other ones, Slacker Radio, Foursquare, Shazam, things like that. But it gives you some recommended apps there, but the biggest differences come a couple of different places. You can see, let's go into apps here and go to all applications, and let's go to, you can see it's separated a little bit differently there. The color's a little bit different. Let's go to top free and just download one. We'll do Pandora, for example. You can see that the comments are now separated from the main tab. So about and comments are separate, so I can scroll over, look at those, scroll back, and then go down through here, check the screenshots, and then install from there. Now, once I have an application installed, a nice feature of Android 2.2, you can enable it to receive automatic updates. So instead of going into the market and says you have 1,200 new updates for 1,200 of your apps, it'll automatically update those apps. If you so select the checkbox, it'll auto update those apps, so you don't have to worry about doing that. Now, some still require manual updating, like my Verizon Mobile, things like that. But once you have it installed, let's go into here. Pandora is installed. We can go into here and click Allow Automatic Updating. So now, whenever a new version of Pandora comes out, it'll auto download it to my device. Some people love it, some people hate it, but it's nice that the features there in Android 2.2. Outside of the obvious design changes, most of the operating system is very familiar if you're used to the Droid 2 or the Droid X. Very similar on that front. You have your dock down here, the modified dock with the apps drawer, your contacts shortcut, and your phone shortcut. And you can see the phone's very similar to the other Motorola, the high-end Motorola devices. Now, one thing that was different to me, again, I'm used to the BlackBerry keyboard where I just click and start dialing and go from there. On this one, when you do that, like for example, let's say you want to dial somebody out here in the main menu, you start to dial 9, 8, and it automatically brings up a Google search because it thinks you're typing, not that you're using the numbers, unless you click Alt, which it still brings up the Google search. Once you're in phone, though, obviously you can do that, and you can dial the number. Now in your contacts list, I don't have anybody in here, but let's see if I can do. Let's do pound 646. Now you see as I start to type it in, it recognizes that I have that contact already in here, so it brings up pound MIN automatically. It'll do the same thing with your contacts, or pound 646. There we go. Okay, it'll bring it up if you put in the number, or you bring up stuff like M. Automatically brings it up. that way as well. So you have that option. You can review recent calls by all calls, missed calls, received calls, or outgoing calls, and typical Motorola setup there. Contacts in there as well, and favorites based on who you dial the most, or whoever you want to add to your contacts or your favorites list rather. So very similar to Motorola devices of the past. Same thing with the contacts list. Not a lot of changes there. You can see they're very similar. You can scroll from left to right to see the history between your contacts. I dialed voicemail earlier, all contacts, or I can go to status, which brings up recent status updates based on my social networking feed. So you have quite a few options in contacts. But let's say, bring up old man Baker, for example. We'll put in just some fake number. I just want to show you. Once that pops up, old man Baker's in there. Click on that, it'll bring up the number, and you can call or text message from the contacts list. So very similar to all those Motorola devices you played with in the store or had in the past. Not a lot of changes on that front. You have 7 home screens as well. You can scroll through those by scrolling pretty quickly down here on the bottom part of the display, or you can just scroll over one by one. Let's take a look at the camera, and as I said, it's 5 megapixel camera with a flash. Honestly, I've been pretty unimpressed with the camera. It's not the greatest in the world, and that said, again, this isn't a media-centric device. It's not the demographic that they're targeting with the Droid Pro, but that said, I still would expect a little bit of a better camera than what came, or what has been on this one, at least in my testing. We'll take a picture of the Samsung Continuum as an example. And first of all, there's no dedicated camera button on the side, which has always been a frustration of mine. You do have to click here. It'll zoom in, take the picture, and let's have a look and see how it looked here. So, again, it's a decent for taking quick shots, but you'll notice that the colors are very washed out. It's very pixelated, which I'm not sure if you're seeing on the screen here, but it's very pixelated and just not the best camera. I can think of a bunch of even 5 megapixel options that are better. The iPhone 4, I was more pleased with the G2, the MyTouch 4G, and a couple others. So just wasn't pleased with the camera, but in terms of settings, you can of course share and edit, do some minor editing. But let's see just out of the box here what settings you have. You have your typical picture resolution, your video, if you want to upload, do a quick upload, review time, and then let's jump back out and see side you have your scenes, your effects, your flash, and then you can switch to the video camera if you want to use it all of a sudden. So again, it's not, this device, the demographic is not a media-centric demographic. It's people that want a keyboard, want a BlackBerry-like feel, and want that access to the VPN client, things like that. I don't have a VPN client, or else I would try to log in and use that in the review. But for people that do and need enterprise messaging, enterprise support, this is the device to have. I doubt that John Q, CEO, is more interested in taking pictures of the tree outside than he is with getting his VPN stuff and getting his enterprise messaging taken care of. That said, it's 2010. Even on a device like this, the camera should be relatively decent. Now, a review wouldn't be complete without 2 things. One, a quadrant standard test and a speed test as well. So let's run the quadrant standard test. And while it's running, let me tell you a little bit about the device. I've used it actually as my personal device for 4 days. And I've been pretty pleased with the sound quality. Now, the call quality hasn't been that great. I was actually pretty unimpressed with the call quality. I started the first call when I pulled this out of the box last week, and was like, wow, this came from Motorola. Motorola's had a history of having fantastic earpieces, having fantastic call quality, works well with the network. Jury's still out for me on the Droid Pro. I know, the call was very choppy. The earpiece was loud, but the call quality wasn't that great. Speakerphone, decent, not great as well. I was able to use it, while in my office or my apartment. Once I traveled out to a coffee shop or gas station or anything that was remotely busy, I wasn't that pleased with it. It's not loud enough for me. But the call quality was interesting. I took it to Verizon dead spot. It did drop the call. It didn't. It was choppy, and then it dropped it. Tried again, dropped it again. So if signal's your thing, if you're in an area where you have 1 bar of service and it cuts in and out, this may not be the device for you. But again, you give and take a little bit with these devices, and that's just the trade-off. That said, it's kind of unfortunate. This is a phone first, and it's unfortunate that happened the way it did. Now, this score was 1,452, so it passes the Nexus 1, the Droid X, both running 2.2, the Evo, the Droid X running 2.1, and the Galaxy S line. So in terms of quadrant standard scores, very pleased there. 1452, That puts it pretty close to the G2 and some of the, based on median testing, the G2, a couple of the other Android devices I've tested recently or within the past 6 months, the Evo, the Epic, all pretty well within or a little bit under the 1452. So that's a very good number. That's right around the G2, and that's still a little bit lower than the MyTouch 4G, but pretty pleased with that result. So let's have a look at the speed test. Actually, let me make sure GPS is enabled first, and it's not. Go back and jump into that. One interesting thing while I'm configuring all this, one interesting thing, the battery life is not great as well. And my first question was, people that are migrating from BlackBerries are used to fantastic battery life, 2 and 3 days of battery life, even more maybe on a GSM model. But the battery life on this thing is just terrible. Like, I would make it 7 or 8 hours and would need to recharge the battery. So, it's one of those things, you do get the media-centric features of Android, you do get the better web browsing experience, all the Gmail and Google support, but the battery life is just not great at all. Even when with moderate use, I wasn't able to make it through the day. I was making it about 10 hours, and the device was powering down. So, if you do get it and you're a battery person, either buy a car charger or try it for 7 or 14 days, give it a couple of good charges, see what you think based on your personal daily use. But I just was not pleased at all with the battery life. Let's have a look at the speed test here and get an idea of our 3G speeds. It's an EVGO revision A device, so speed should be relatively quick. And we'll see what numbers we get here just off the first test. 872 kilobits per second, that's below 1 megabit per second, not great. I've seen it peak at about 2 megabits per second, and that's the highest I've seen on this device. Now it says 4:45, and it's Thanksgiving week, and I live, or my office rather, is right beside the one of the busiest interstates in the state, so that may be that's a trade-off. There's a lot of traffic going through, so that's probably what's happening here. But even at 2 megabits per second, it's decent, but it's no match to some of the HSPA plus speeds or the WiMAX speeds that I've seen on Sprint and occasionally on T-Mobile. So trade-off there. You decide. But in terms of is it a good BlackBerry competitor? Yes. My question is, some of the weaknesses that the BlackBerry had, kind of a poor web browser, less than adequate web browser, it improves upon, it gives Google services, and it maintains some of those enterprise services that people really need. The weaknesses, where the BlackBerry wins, battery life. Battery life is terrible on this phone, and then voice quality. After all, the first purpose of this device is to make phone calls, and on the Droid Pro, it's not the greatest in the world. So that tough call. Take a look at it at the Verizon store. See what you think. My 2 units could be duds, but both have been kind of frustrating in the call quality department and very frustrating in the battery life department. Much more coverage to come on the Motorola Droid Pro on PhoneDog.com. I'm sure we'll have a dogfight. I'm sensing a dogfight between this and the QWERTY-equipped sliding BlackBerry Torch on AT&T. That's going to come pretty soon, so be on the lookout for that as well. But in the meantime, be sure to like us on Facebook, Facebook.com/PhoneDog. We're giving away 100 iPads and even a trip to the Super Bowl in 2011. So that's pretty cool. Plus, we're on there. We're cool people. We're cool to hang out with. And we love being on Facebook and interacting with you guys. So be sure to like us, Facebook.com/PhoneDog. And be sure to follow me on Twitter, PhoneDog_Aaron. You think this is the greatest device ever. You're not having the issues that I had with battery life and call quality. Let me know. PhoneDog_Aaron. Be sure to follow me. Ask me any questions about the Droid Pro. Or just stop in to say hello. Love to chat with you. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.